Okay. Whoa, we are live. Hello, hello. All right, let me get this set up. We are going live in a moment. Just let all the streams go out. Well, hey, guys. Hey, everybody. My name is Will, and I'm one of the co-organizers of Toronto Travel Massive and content creator behind Going Awesome Places. It's been a while, actually, since I've seen all of you guys, and it's great to see so many people on the stream today. So first off, I want to ask you guys, where are you guys watching from? Right now, I'm here at home in Toronto, Canada, and I've pretty much been here since the lockdown. But what about you guys? Drop your comments in Facebook, on the Travel Massive platform as well, which is the preferred way where we'll be able to see all your questions. But let's go through some housekeeping notes first. I mentioned comments earlier. Fill in your comments on the Travel Massive platform on Facebook as well. We'll see all of them and we'll be monitoring them throughout the live stream. Recordings, they're going to be available on the Travel Massive platform afterwards. So don't worry if you need to drop out early, or if you miss something and you want to watch later on, it'll be available on the Travel Massive platform. So today we have an exciting virtual workshop with two experts in the field of PR. Today's session is all about how to become a source to the media. Whether you're a travel brand, content creator, or an entrepreneur, business, or startup, you're going to get something out of today's session. So let's jump right in and bring in our speakers for today. All right, let me do that right now.
Hello.
So I'd first like to introduce you guys to Jessica Parker. She's a longtime travel publicist who has spent a majority of her career in New York City and has worked for agencies, hospitality brands, and as a consultant. She has a new PR course on Teachable called Unpacking the Secrets of Public Relations. And she's a former chapter leader of Travel Massive New York City and also started Travel Massive Beirut. Hey, Jessica.
Hello. Thanks for the intro. Excited to be here today and talk about PR. I think we'll do our very best to pack in a lot of information in the short time that we have. But as you said, I've been doing travel PR for quite a long time and hope to impart some expertise to you guys to apply to your jobs.
Awesome. Now we're going to bring in our second speaker for today. We have Leigh Abbamonte. Hey, Leigh.
What's up, man?
He's an entrepreneur, multimedia travel personality, brand ambassador, travel expert, travel writer, author, and global adventurer. Phew, that's a long list there. He's the youngest person to visit every country in the world, plus North and South Poles, and has a ton of success working with PR and being a source to the media. How's it going, guys? Thanks for being on Travel Massive, our virtual workshop today.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you, Jess.
Hey.
Welcome both you guys. And I'm actually going to let you guys take the floor. I'll catch you guys on the other side.
Sounds good. Thanks, Will. So I convinced Leigh to join me on this session. So you just inherit one side and one perspective this whole hour. Because I'm a travel publicist, I'm going to speak from what I've done on behalf of clients, the quoted myself. And also I've worked with Leigh for many years in many different capacities. And he has a lot of expertise and done a lot of different things as a travel expert on TV, quoted in magazines, online. I do believe you used to have a byline in Kind of Ask Traveler a while back and all sorts of stuff. So Leigh, thanks for joining and committing your time and sharing your expertise today.
Anything for you, Jess.
So with that said, we had a few key takeaways that you guys were to expect during this hour-long session. So we want to give you those things and then obviously take your questions as we see them. If they're relevant to what we're talking about right now, we'll try to take them in real time, but mostly we'll take questions at the end. And since we're new to this technology, we'll do our very best to spot them as well. But yeah, first up is tangible tips on how to present yourself to the media and how to pitch yourself. And definitely this is a topic that we could talk about for a long time, but I'm going to present a things that I suggest, and then I'm going to pass it to Leigh on how he typically presents himself to the media. But first things first is when you're considering reaching out to the media, you basically want to identify what's the value you're bringing to that media outlets. What is their audience like? What's their demographic? What is the other segments that they've covered? If you're talking about broadcast, if you're talking about magazines or newspapers, what stories are relevant to their audience? And then what you want to do is distill your expertise to the publication. Why you in a sea of travel experts? This is your elevator pitch. What is your maybe 3 points that makes you most relevant and backs up your authority on the subject of what you're presenting to the media? A lot of times, if you have had the opportunity of contributing to other publications or been on your local broadcast or any type of segments, you want to create that in your media kit to present yourself as someone who's been an authority with other credible outlets. So that backs up when you send over to a pitch over to a journalist or a producer that you have been quoted elsewhere. You're seen as someone that people also like to come to for comment on certain things, such as a travel expert and commenting on the current news, obviously being the pandemic and the future of travel is definitely a hot topic. So how are you relevant? How can you comment on the current news of today? And something that I think that is not often talked about is also being someone really good to work with. Basically, that means being reliable, someone that the media can count on. A lot of times you'll see that media are on deadline all the time, and they're in a tight window, and they need you to respond quickly, and also deliver what you say you will when you will. Like if you're going to provide a quote or some information, that you do it as quickly as possible and in quotable sentences. So if you're looking at other articles of people being quoted, how are they succinct in their message and their points? And that's usually what's grabbed out by the journalists and used in a story that is on topic with what they're doing. And if you're really great to work with, they will come back to you time and time again. I know that media will come to me because they know that I deliver on time. I have great resources and clients that I can provide or other expertise in the industry. So, and if you don't respond in time, they move on because they just have a limited time to work within their deadlines usually. So if you make it easy for them and present all your information up front and why you, and then what they can expect from you in terms of expertise, that's a great way to set yourself up for success. So Leigh, I'm going to pass it over to you. I send a lot, but go ahead.
I mean, you said a lot of it, and you know, the main thing is why you? Like, why are you credible? And when someone asks you that, you have to know the answer. Like, why are you an expert? Like, just because you have a website or a blog or whatever, you know, doesn't make you an expert. There's thousands of people with that kind of stuff. So what else have you done to back it up? You want to do multimedia stuff, so you want to be able to be credible in a variety of different mediums, whether it's television, print, blogs, social media, satellite media tours, you know, tape stuff, live stuff. You got to be kind of a jack of all trades. And the most important thing that Jess said is you have to be reliable and you have to be easy to work with. Nobody wants to hire somebody they don't like. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. Nobody wants to work with somebody who's late, who's unreliable. And honestly, that's the best advice I could give you. Just be nice. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. Don't be arrogant. Don't be a jerk. Just do the right thing. Oh, and know what you're talking about. Some people go on, you know, TV. I see them and they're like, oh, you know, what's this? And they don't even know what they're talking about. So know what you're talking about. Stay on top of the news, especially right now. I mean, I'm doing national TV broadcasts every day, you know, from wherever I am, sometimes from my phone. And you have to stay on top of stuff like Corona and travel restrictions and what the airlines are doing. There's so much right now. So if you're in the travel space trying to make your name or whatever, now is actually a great time to do it because there's so much misinformation or unknowns out there. And, you know, you can offer your opinions, which one's the best, who's doing what. And people constantly need that information. And it's so valuable if you can be reliable and the one giving it in a way that's easily understood.
Yeah, and to your point, a lot of producers and people are willing to look outside their normal experts, because a lot of the brands don't really want to be quoted right now because they don't know the future, or they don't want to talk about their policies and cancellations. So if you, from an outsider, can keep up on what each airline is doing, it does, I mean, it changes with the wind, but if you can really show that you've been keeping an eye on what, you know, the suppliers, the tour operators are doing, you can comment on domestic travel if you can't get away, that type of stuff, if you're presenting, and comment on the news of the day. And one thing before I move on from the how to present yourself, also Leigh being someone with a really big audience outside of the publication he's working with, showcasing like how many visitors per month your blog gets, your, you know, Twitter following is this size. Because a lot of times, you know, the journalists and people, especially with digital and broadcast, they're looking for more eyeballs and expanding their own audience. So if you're presenting yourself as an authority, but also someone who has a following that wants to see you on these publications as well, you're attracting a bigger audience for them. So, and then just was going to pivot over to what we were talking about, news of the day. It's happening. I mean, the news cycle is so rapid right now. So if you want to hop on and say that you're willing to talk on the topic, a lot of the times, maybe the easiest thing is potentially to like start local and talk to your local TV broadcast, for example. But keeping an eye on the news and reading what's trending is truly important, because you can kind of latch on and make yourself relevant to, you know, it could be, even if it's not pandemic related, pretty soon we're going to talk about holiday travel. What is actually accessible for holiday travel this year, given the restrictions, and planning ahead and creating almost an editorial calendar for yourself, like knowing some, you know, every year you're going to do something on Valentine's Day. Every year you're going to do something on these like annual things. And you want to present yourself a little bit further out, and pitching those editorial calendars as such. So broadcast is definitely more short lead. Editorial, like magazines, you're looking at they close the book about 6 months out. So they've already taken their stories and finalized, assigned everyone. So if you want to be quoted or be relevant into a print publication, that takes a lot of forethought into reaching out to when you want to talk to them. So if you're really focusing on the digital fast-paced broadcast, that is something you can really latch on and get a feel for, you know, being that expert and following the news cycle and being relevant in the times. But then further out, you can talk about seasonal tips and things like that. Leigh, any other tips on how you kind of plan out when you, because you've worked with a publicist who pitched you, you've also just reactively talk to stations, like what do you typically do? Are you planning things out in the future?
So I do a bunch of different things, and I'm also in a position where I've been doing this for a long time, And you know, the way I got started was not usual, and it's more difficult to get started now because there's so much competition. I started doing television by accident when I went to every country in the world, and I became like the youngest guy to do it. I got a lot of media attention, and then they started asking me to do stuff on TV. And they started calling me a travel expert. And I'm like, well, I guess I am, but I didn't like go to school to be a travel expert, you know? Right. So you just kind of got to run with it. And whatever you're saying you are, you are. So you have to kind of own it. And if like you're a food person or a lifestyle person or a clothes person, you know, own that, but then also try to branch out in other things as well. But you have to be like an octopus, you know, you have to talk to publicists, you have to talk to PR people, to marketing people, and then the most important people for like, especially for broadcast, are bookers and producers, not necessarily the anchors. So like you could be best friends with like Anderson Cooper or whatever, but that doesn't mean he's gonna like put you on TV. You know, you have to know the people who directly do it. It's kind of like pitching a financial or any kind of company. You want to talk to the person who controls the money. You don't want to talk to like a lower level person or somebody who doesn't make the decisions. That's the other thing. You have to cut through and figure out who makes the decisions, and those are the people that you want to talk to the most. And she mentioned something interesting. So it's like everyday news, as agonizing as watching the news can be every day, and trust me, it is. But you have to stay on top of the situation, because literally I get emails every day about doing segments, and I kind of pick and choose what I do, because I don't want to talk about the same thing constantly because it's annoying. And you know, you want to also do multiple outlets. Unless you're employed by one, you want to do different, because the audiences are different, time slots are different, hosts are different, producers are different, and they might like you, they might not, and you want to get on everyone's good side. So I always say, don't just do one thing. Try to do a lot of things and see what sticks. And she also mentioned something interesting about like seasonal things, like holiday travel tips, like it's Memorial Day or it's 4th of July or, Thanksgiving traffic, like stuff like that. You'd be shocked how many of those that I've done. They're like fluff pieces. They're easy, right? You just say, oh, well, leave early, be patient, give yourself time at the airport, consider driving, leave on alternate days as opposed to, the night before Thanksgiving, that type of thing. But if you're on television, remember, you're the expert. So that's the whole idea. Some pieces are fluff pieces. Some pieces or segments are great, talking about coronavirus, as horrible as it is, but with regards to travel, if you're the one on TV talking about it, that's important because that means you're on television, whether it's local or national, as the expert, and people are seeing you as so. So you got to kind of realize who's seeing you and how they're seeing you when you're the one doing it. And like the same goes for quotes. Just like yesterday, or in the last couple of days, they've been quoted in Newsweek, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. So, it's just being that person who has the ability to get quoted and not just contact people and say, hey, can I give you a quote, but who is reliable enough that they'll continually ask you over and over. And, whether it be Forbes or, Newsweek or, Pick a magazine or newspaper, that's really important stuff. And then also like, if someone doesn't know if you're a referral and then they Google you or whatever, and they see, oh, he was quoted in the Chicago Tribune or the LA Times or the Washington Post. Those are like big time publications, not just in like, wherever, Tulsa, whatever. I don't even know. I just made that up. But, just like you want to be quoted as much as you can and in the biggest publications you can.
Right. And not everyone knows Anderson Cooper like Leigh, apparently. But it is important to identify the bookers. And I would say if you're saying that this is great for the morning, more fluffy lifestyle show, you want to look for the booker for the morning shows. And then there's someone typically for midday news. And then there's someone for nightly news. So that's more hard-hitting kind of news of the day. So you want to obviously watch what, and every journalist and reporter will say, like, please read the publication before you pitch us. Please understand our segments before you go after us broadcast wise. So you come off informed. Obviously, anytime you approach them, you've done your homework and said, I'm the expert because I've seen this, I can comment on this, or things like that. And also something to do, say, for example, you're used in the Chicago Tribune, you can go now to broadcast and say, I was quoted in the Chicago Tribune. Do you want me to comment on broadcast, the local stations, for example, as a way, and vice versa. Like if you were seen on the local TV, going to the local paper and saying, if you want to do a more extrapolated story on this, this TV segments are only under a minute and a half typically. You can then go to the local newspaper, for example, and pitch them as well. And as much as it's really nice to be hit in all these, and we're talking with a lot of, Toronto office, audience, the biggest, Toronto or some of the major cities, there's a lot of competition for those, like the Today Show in the US and New York, huge market, a lot of competition. And sometimes you want to start local and then work your way up, get some practice if you haven't done TV, and then also learning to talk in sound bites. So a sound bite could be 7 seconds, and it seems like an incredibly short time, but we've talked for, 19 minutes and we've said a ton. So if you can distill your points and practice them before you get on camera, honestly, it's very nerve-wracking. So if you've never done it before, I say you practice. And working in those short sound bites of getting your point across is a good tip there. And one thing that I think people should do is when they're traveling, Leigh, I know you do this a lot, like you go to Australia and you're on local Australian news. If you go to Italy and you're traveling, you get picked up local, or even Phoenix market and things like that. You can go, and now because you don't have to do anything in studio, at least at the time being, you can do a lot of it virtually. So we want to talk about some of your pitching while you're on the road, maybe.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned has been really big for me, and I didn't even realize it. Like everything that I've done with this whole thing has kind of been trial and error by accident. I never intended to be doing what I'm doing like for the last 13 years. I mean, this is unbelievable to me, right? But local TV, like when you're in a place, is so easy to get on. You just got to find the right person to talk to, and like every news station is on Twitter and Facebook and whatever. And usually the person who runs a local Twitter account is probably the producer. or, you know, somebody who can get you in touch with who you need to talk to. So like when I go to, I spend a lot of time out west, and I go to Phoenix and Vegas a lot, and I'm always on the news out there because I've made contacts out there. And another great way to make news contacts, at least that I've found, is these things called satellite media tours, which actually Jess told me about like 10 years ago. And it's not only is it a great source of income, but it's also a great source of contacts, because you're talking to local news stations in like markets you've never even heard of, like Terre Haute, Indiana, like Wichita, Kansas, you know, things like that. So then they see you, and then I'll get emails from like random places, and they'll be like, yeah, you want to come on? And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. And, you know, you can do it remotely, so it's like no big deal. And it takes, you know, less than 5 minutes usually. So, and local is so much easier than national, because they let you talk and they don't interrupt you. National is a little bit different, but yeah, just different things like that. And when I go to other countries, like in London or in Sydney, or, you know, and pretty much any English speaking place, I'll throw some emails out before I go. And, you know, for me, it's been nice. And I just want to say hi to Anna, a fellow Terp, go Terps. And hey, Alex, what's up?
Alexandra, not Alex. Never Alex.
I'm sorry, Alexandra. My bad.
I can't believe you did that.
Yeah, I can't believe I did that.
Well, I would say Alexandra's a good example, who's been a contributor and writer for Forbes for, I mean, her entire career, and who's been also someone I worked with and pitched clients from the brand perspective. And also Leigh's been quoted in a lot of stories. And she comes at it from a personal finance travel angle. So understanding her beat, I bring her relevant stuff when it makes sense. If you're looking for Forbes, she's on. For a lot of these where you're saying, how do you find these people? Like Twitter is definitely, like, I was just going to say, internet stalking people is a wonderful thing. So just going on Twitter, LinkedIn, and a lot of the local stations have a news desk or a hotline. And that's pretty much probably the only time I would say you can cold call someone, is calling the tip line and saying, hi, I'm in town, I'm so-and-so. And really quickly, someone always is manning the news desk, obviously, with breaking news. And they can maybe give you the proper producer's information, or they can say, you know, throw it up on the news board when they're looking at the news of the day and they have a hole and they want to fill it. So if you want to actually give a buzz, like I usually do that when I have a client that's doing an activation in a local market, they tell you to call basically like a couple of days before, and then the day before, and the top of the news, they might send a truck out, a video, and do the interview on site. So if you're a brand, for example, and you're looking to get news, you can also do that really short window, and they really won't tell you, because if it bleeds, it leads, or if it's like breaking news, you'll get bumped. So you always have to take it with a grain of salt. News works really fast, but as long as you're good to work with and flexible, that definitely helps you a lot. And another,
and just what you said, take it with a grain of salt. Sorry, I was just gonna say, and when you're pitching, you know, especially via Twitter or like whatever, and these people don't know you, expects to be told no 90% of the time, or not hear anything at all. So, and don't get mad or offended or send like a mean email like, how could you not respond to me? Don't be immature. Don't be like a child. You know, just accept and move on. It's okay to be told no, and it's okay to say no. Just remember that. It's very important.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is it's really, if you want to be in the news, and they have a lot of options of experts and people they could reach out to. And typically they'll go to people they know and they've had relationships with. But if you're presenting yourself to them, it's all about them and their audience. Like, why are we putting you on local station? Because you have something that ties to the local business, that ties to this airport, you know, particular route. Like, here's a great destination within a short flight or within a short drive distance. You're giving something that's hyper local that their audience, their viewers or their readers can actually tangibly action. So it's something, when you're doing consumer news, if you're doing a once in a lifetime something or other that no one else can replicate, it's not really relevant. So you have to really think, how is this benefiting who I'm pitching right now and their audience? And as soon as you nail in on that, that definitely helps open doors. But I mean, as a publicist for like 12 years, you get rejections daily. So I don't want to position this as super easy, but there are a lot of things, if you're strategic about it, that you can definitely get in the news. For sure.
Just one other thing to add that I always do, and not saying I'm great or anything, but it always gets the reaction that I want. If you're doing local news, especially if, you know, you're in, let's say, Wichita, Kansas, you know, just because to me that's a really random place, and like, so all of a sudden you're on and you're some like fast talking New Yorker, and they're like, why am I listening to this guy? And then you're like, oh, how the Shockers look this year? Like Wichita State, that's their local college team. Like, know something about the local market you're in. If you don't know anything, I mean, they got the Google, you know, and check it out.
The Google is the ultimate resource. Yeah, I would say, you know, I was pitching for a client in Atlanta and Georgia, and I could not crack it for this client. And then I mentioned something, you know, a recipe that was, you know, Georgia peach related, and boom, people wanted it on ours. Like, as soon as you realize what they're looking for, and really localize it for them, I can't stress that enough. I agree with them. And it creates some nice banter with them as well. And just makes people really enjoy and want you back on.
And they remember you, exactly, and then they want you back on. Exactly. Angel, what's up, dude?
All right, Leigh's fan club is on. And then another great, like, some of the tools that you can use are HARO, which is short for Help a Reporter Out. Sometimes that's like, they don't respond a ton. A lot of people put out a lot of them and get a lot of responses. And it's a complimentary service. And you can respond to journalists who are writing for, you know, writing something for Reader's Digest, something, you know, for Today Online, traditional publications, and things like that. And it's good to get to know who's putting these out regularly, who's looking for sources. So maybe if they don't respond there, you can identify who's covering this beat, and you get more familiar with who you want to, you know, develop relationships with. There's Muckrack. You can search on Contently. Cision is a database that, especially if you're like a small business or a publicist or public relations firm, and you want to have access to pretty much the spectrum of news from broadcast to blogs, you can sign up for a subscription. Sometimes you can share them with another agency, so it makes it more attainable because it can be expensive. But there's a lot of services out there popping up that are making it a little more easier for small businesses to be able to get to the right person, like who's writing the front of book news at, you know, the Condé Nast Traveler, who's doing this section, and it helps you really drill in and see all the contacts. But always be respectful of who you're pitching, because their inboxes are insanely flooded. So just always respect their time and present value. Don't be a time waster.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think networking is great. So, I mean, while we can't do that in person now, I mean, just going to New York Travel Massive for a really long time. I've hung out with people from the Toronto chapter and worked with them. Met actually Christina over in Rome once. So networking, I think, really expands your opportunity, and people will refer you because they've met you or you're top of mind to them. So I think networking is always king. And if you're a content creator or an expert, going to the agencies, befriending them. I mean, they're probably pitching you anyway, but if you ever expand your services with them and your relationship, like if you're ever looking for an expert to, you know, talk about your product, because I'm already, you know, have an affinity for your brand and I really like it. I'm also doing this segment on TV. You can then build out bigger paying relationships. And I feel like Leigh can probably jump into that. Obviously, satellite media tours being one of them, but maybe talking about some of these ways that you can parlay them into more paid opportunities.
Yeah, networking is so important. It's hard to underscore how important that is, because like if someone has 20 options or even 5 options and they know one of the people personally, you know, they're probably going to go with them. If they like you and they have a relationship with you and you guys went out, you know, you took them out to coffee or lunch or had a drink or whatever. I mean, that goes a long way, you know, and also to show that like in person you can handle yourself. But jokingly, but I'm being 100% serious. It's really important, and also just be normal. You know, be like a normal person, relatable. You know, just because you're the you know, say talent or like whatever, the one who's getting pitched doesn't mean you can like big time other people, because people hate that. You know what I mean? Who's going to help you? The guy that they're going to help the person they like, or the person who, you know, might be a bigger name or whatever, but is a big timer. No one likes those people. So like I would say, be nice. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. Network, get to know people, and then stay in touch with people. Like if you're on, you know, Facebook or, you know, Instagram, you see someone's birthday, you know, don't just write it either. I always text people like happy birthday. You know what I mean? Because everyone writes on the wall or, you know, sends a message or whatever. But if you actually text someone, it shows you take the time to reach out, and it just kind of expands personal relationships, and it takes 1 second. You know what I mean? So just little things like that. It's really just so important. And, you know, connections, relationships, I mean, that's life. Even with this whole disaster going on right now, it's like, with this, that, whatever this is called, what's this called? Stagecoach or something? Or Scapegoat? I don't even know. Or like Zoom or, that's, yeah. Or like, Zoom or, whatever else people use these days. Stay in touch with people or call people, and again, it's just so important. And even if you don't know anything about technology like me.
Yeah, we've gone back in time. There are now stagecoaches. The pandemic has really set us back. I would agree, because I worked with Leigh for many years, and because he's good to work with, we pass you around the agency or pass you around to people because we can count on you. And especially on the agency side, I know there's a lot of PR people on here, and that you have to present something to your client that is like, an SMT, a satellite media tour, is quite expensive. And you have to know that this person is going to be, of high value. Your neck is on the line. Like, your client is like, you're on the chopping block if this doesn't deliver. So that you can count on Leigh to come and deliver and hit on the points and do a full day of like broadcasts across the US. Or you're going to go on a media trip and you're doing a collaboration, and then they're going to do some TV afterward. Whatever it is, that you can really count your reputation and your clients on it. So that's really big when you can count on these people. And it's always a business transaction. It goes both ways. So like the PR people can't ghost, because also word gets around. And this industry is way too small to burn bridges on both sides of the fence, I think.
And on the talent side, like, especially when it comes to, really everything, but especially something where there's so much money involved, like satellite media tour. And if you're fortunate enough to get a gig doing that, I mean, we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars for a couple hours of work. So, maybe I'm, just a little bit greedy, but I want as many of those as I could possibly get. And you want to do a good job so they continually ask you back, because I always say that's kind of like a base salary. Like, if you have X amount of dollars coming in, then you can kind of experiment with everything else, but you have to deliver, continually deliver. And, you have to have energy, and you have to be good on your feet, and you have to be funny, and you have to have relationships with both the people behind the scenes and on camera that you're talking to, and stuff like that. Again, it's just so important. Be reliable, be on time, be good, and don't bring like political biases into things either, because now it's so easy to do. But, just kind of turn your head off for like 5 minutes and just do your job,
Yeah, pretend the world isn't falling around you. Well, there's definitely a lot of different things we could really dive into. Will, I just want to do a quick.
Shout out to my friend Rob down in South Africa. What's up, Rob? Sorry.
All right, enough of the fan club. But yeah, Will, are you seeing any questions that we can start tackling now, or should we kind of keep going into different topics about PR and such, or some examples?
If you guys got other examples you guys want to talk about, definitely. We have a few questions. I have a ton of questions. So let me know.
Yeah, we could start taking questions unless Leigh, you wanted to add on anything.
All right. So we have one from Mike Howard. He says, we are experts in glamping and RV travel, which are very relevant travel styles due to COVID-19. How do we figure out which outlets who might be interested in such a story or segment? And how do we find the bookers and or decision makers at the right print outlets?
Sure. Hello. I just saw these guys actually in their RV. Since you guys are on the move, obviously, I would start targeting some of the places that you anticipate being. Since I know that you guys are going to Ohio, you could reach out in advance to some of the local broadcasts, look at the news desk information there. Again, start looking on Twitter. Who are some of the bookers? They're typically on there, like when anything happens, or something that's relevant to local, they'll usually be on there sifting through something where they can get experts. So I would say start looking at where you're headed. Those papers, and for example, I worked on USA Today and Ray McNally ages ago, Best of the Road, and I had 5 teams in cars going out across the United States, and I would go and know where they're going to be next and pitch and get them on TV or local papers, things like that. And yeah, I mean, I think just broadly in general, that topic is really important because everyone can't go anywhere out of the United States. Really, there's limited options, and people now see this as a way to travel. And you obviously wrote the book on it, so for Nat Geo, and you have that as a backing of your expertise. You can say how many places you've stayed. To fill that down and offer that as like you can give your places around America. You could do a national publication. You could go to Thrillist. You could go to Elite Daily. You know, glamping is a very hot topic. There's plenty of options with that topic for sure.
Yeah, and what's up, Mike and Ann? How you guys doing? I assume you're still in Pennsylvania. I heard from you the other day. And listen, with that whole RV thing right now, I mean, that's like big stuff right now. Like people are buying RVs left and right and like wanting to do it. And since, you know, we're global pariahs and everything, and we can't leave the United States, that's like going to be a big thing. And you guys could be at the forefront of that, especially with like what you've already done and, you know, authors of this and spoken at this. You just got to get in front of the right people. But it's just like trial and error, man. Just like she said, look it up, just shoot out a bunch of things. If you're going to Ohio, there's like 10 different markets in Ohio, you know, like little ones too, like you don't even think of like Toledo, you know, stuff like that, Akron, like little smaller towns besides like Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus. So, you know, don't think that you just have to stick to the big ones either.
Yeah, and even if you're going to newspapers, because they're so understaffed by newspaper subscriptions, guys, we got to keep them in business. But I would say that you can go after the local beat. It doesn't have to be like lifestyle travel. So you have a couple options, and because the newsroom is really small, and obviously you can ask them like who's most relevant that I send this to. The news people there are much more approachable. Like, you know, if you do that to the New York Times, they'll blow you off or tell you get a life. But if you do it to a local paper, like, hey, I know you might be understaffed or a little bit, you know, a lot of people are furloughed or, you know, doing double duty for different beats. So reaching out to them now and saying like, I'm offering you, you know, this story idea. Does it work? Does it help you? Who's the best writer that covers this stuff? And a lot of times they'll help you out and send you to the right person or forward it to them. So that's something on a tip in a small newsroom, for example.
Awesome. Great answers, guys. I got one for you guys. How do you become good at being on TV? You know, I've heard about being media trained, and I think you guys alluded to a few things about being succinct and having short sound bites. But what's the key to that? And practice obviously is a big part of it, but how do you become good at being on TV?
You know what? A couple things, and I say this in all seriousness, and I don't want to come across as like arrogant or whatever. But number one, you have to be confident. That is the singular most important thing. Like you have to realize exactly this. When I'm on television, especially early on, and I was like nervous or anxious about it, now it's like second nature, but you're the one on TV. The people watching you are sitting on their asses at home, like in their underwear, watching you. You know what I mean? So you have to think of it that way. You're the guy on TV that's the expert, that these people have no idea who they are. So remember, you're the guy who knows what they're talking about. And I always think like that, like I'm here for a reason, you know what I mean? And when you do that, it really relaxes you because it gives you more confidence. And a veteran TV guy told me that like 10 years ago. And I'm telling you, it really, really helped because like, it's a weird thing. Like once the camera goes on, your heart races a little bit, you know your stuff, but then sometimes you get a little anxious. But if you do it like that, it really helps. And of course, practice. You want to get on as much as you can. That's why I say pitch to local news networks, because the way I look at that, you don't get any money for it, but it's like practice. You know what I mean? And practice makes perfect. So when you do get the shot on the Today Show or Good Morning America or Fox and Friends or whatever it might be, you nail it, and then you continually get asked to do it because you were the guy that was funny and confident. Oh, and another thing, make jokes, make people laugh. You know, take the edge off. Like, don't be afraid to like, you know, be a little stupid. You know what I mean? But in a funny way, not in like a, I don't know what I'm talking about way. You know what I mean? People get a kick out of that because it really humanizes you. Yeah.
Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
For TV, also, yes, practice, and also have someone else do like mock interviews with you. Get someone else's an outside perspective before you, especially if it's a big deal and it's your first time. I would say have someone who's willing to practice with you as though they're the reporter, and also then videotape it and watch yourself because you don't realize the goofy faces you make or twitches, and you want to try to limit that. And you also want to You also want to limit like certain like clothing that are too distracting. You know, there's a lot of tips. You can definitely like Google this, and I'm not the expert, but like, you know, something that obviously slimming, ladies with skirts, you know, if you're going in studio on camera, you know, make sure that you're crossing your legs, or, you know, all these kind of tips that can kind of help you, but you're comfortable in what you're wearing during the interview as well, is something that you want to be mindful of, and you'll start to see yourself and you'll get more comfortable. And then I'd say take a pause when you feel like you're going too fast and slow yourself down. I mean, sound bites are sound bites, but I think you don't want to sound like you're almost like spinning. You want to slow yourself down and reset if you feel like you're getting anxious, for sure.
Oh, and just one other piece of advice. If you're going to wear like a button-down shirt, like a suit kind of shirt, if you're going to wear white or light blue, wear an undershirt if you're not wearing a jacket, because sometimes it can be hot in those studios. And then if you're sweating, like you look like you're sweating. So wear an undershirt if you wear those colors. Trust me on that one.
Hot tip right there. I love it. We got an audience question here from Angel. Are there key SMT agencies that book talent / travel experts that you'd recommend in LA or New York City? I guess, first of all, I'm wondering what SMT is, but I'll let you guys answer that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. And I give Jess so much credit. We were sitting in Barcelona like 10 years ago or something like that. And she's like, wow, you should do SMTs. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And she goes, Satellite Media Tour. And, you know, she explained it to me. And basically what it is you're sitting in one place, whether it's a studio or, you know, some kind of place on location. You know, I've done them all over the world, really. And you have an earpiece in and you answer the same questions with like 30 different news anchors around the country or wherever you might be doing it. And you're hired by a company, whether it's Satellite Media Tour media, like, you know, relations company, or the company itself or their PR. And you're essentially their spokesman for about 4 or 5 hours. And you're speaking on behalf of their entire company. It's a massive, like, you know, multiple 6-figure production. And the talent can rake in a lot of money. And, you know, it's fun, it's easy, it's good exposure. So you want to get the most of it as the talent that you can. And in terms of agencies, there's a ton of them, Angel. And, you know, I work with a bunch of them. I won't sign a deal with one because I also work with like PR for different companies, like I'm sure you would want to do too. But the idea is when you get contacted by one, you know, to do one, or if you reach out to all of them and stay in touch with those people, because I'm telling you, in this business, that's how you like can make some real money.
Right. And it can go both ways. You can work with a satellite media tour company that's like pitching these things. So they'll go out to the brands to secure them to do a spend with them because they own a satellite media station. So they're selling those like satellite windows, and they're using their Rolodex, for example, like all the news desks in America or their relationships to certain things. And so they'll basically guarantee to the brand or the client that they can probably expect at least like 15, you know, and you're talking like really good day, like you're talking in like 20 interviews back to back, and you start at the crack of dawn because you're doing morning shows typically on more like lifestyle topics. And then also I've also done some satellite media tours, like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you know, don't want to date myself, but I was on the launch team for that as well. And we pitched a lot of the different, like the designers, and then we would do the celebrities at certain stages and book them. So I was booking and pitching the satellite windows and passing it off to the team to slot them into their time. And some are live and some are taped. So they'll tell you in advance, for example, if this is going to be taped or live, just so you can prepare, know that they might like cut things out or whatever later, but or even news paths, where they bundle up a package. If you're working with someone from like CBS News Path or Fox News Edge, for example, someone on the station is taking your segment and pushing up basically on the wire, like AP, you know, Associated Press, they're like syndicating that across, and all the stations can pull down this segment because it's like, you know, covers like what's the future of travel. It's something that might be relatable to like almost all markets, and they can all take them down and use them. So that's kind of some of the stuff and logistics behind it.
And just one other thing, if you don't like being on TV, I mean, Angel, I know you do, but if other people are not comfortable on TV, there's also radio media tours, RMTs, and they're like super easy to do. You're literally just reading and then just having a conversation on a little headset thing. I mean, it's super easy and it's still very good money.
Yeah, that's true. Good example.
That's a good example. I know Angel was also asking, are there specific agencies that you can look for that are interested in travel experts? Could be in LA or New York City, but really anywhere around the world. And any come to mind?
Well, I mean, I do the majority of them in New York, not just because I live in New York, but just because they have the most like remote studios, I think. I've also done probably, 8 or 10 in Las Vegas. I've done a bunch in Miami. So some people want to do them outside. And generally when you want to do them outside, you pick warmer destinations like Miami, or I've done in Austin, Texas, also Scottsdale, Arizona. So remember, you start these at like 6 in the morning. So it has to be like warm. So like, the talent can be outside, like not huddled up like, an Eskimo or something like that. And, you're comfortable. And so a lot of times if you're doing them outside, it's in a warm weather destination, unless it's in the summer. Like I've done them in like Alberta, Canada, things like that. But you would never do that in like January,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some agencies that I've worked with. It's been a little while since I've done them. We used to do them with Expedia for a lot of ours. Like if we had studies or data or seasonal stories, we had our in-house expert at Expedia doing all these. So sometimes it depends. You have to look at the brand. Like they might have an in-house person that really that's their in-house spokesperson. But if you can present a value as to why you would do it in their stead and know you can book stuff. And we had an in-house team that actually did it. But there's definitely some, if you look up satellite media tours, you can definitely scope those out. I would look on LinkedIn and stuff, but I don't have anyone that I know off the top of my head in LA, but I'm sure there are, just knowing how much, talent and studios are there.
Sounds good. We have another audience question. Dayton's asking, when contacting local TV, who do you try to contact at a local TV station? I think you guys talked a little bit, a few examples earlier, but yeah, what tips do you have regarding local TV?
I think we mentioned most of it. I mean, just go through Twitter. I find that to be the most reliable thing, especially when you don't know anybody. And, send them a DM or just at them and, just be like, hey, if you're not the person, can you please connect me to the person? And then include like, why should they care? Like, if you have a website or something like that, or at least the topic. Remember, local news is always looking for content. So you're going to have much more success with local news stations as a random than you would with national, because national, there's certain protocols, but local's always looking for things,
Yeah, I would say news desk, titles, bookers. A lot of the smaller markets may not have just someone dedicated to being a booking position. I would say that's more like Today's Show, or when they have celebrities in LA, for example. So they have someone who's really building and owning those relationships. But I would say like the news desk, also, again, someone who's handling just the morning show or midday news. They'll typically say what section they handle. And again, you could look that up on like LinkedIn if you're not buying into Cision, which is, a whole subscription, or you go on Twitter and you can really look up. And now also consider like the ABC, NBC, Fox, all the affiliates. So go through each of the stations and scope out what they're doing. And then you can probably whittle down. And like I said, it's not a huge production there. So there's probably just a handful of producers. And you can always say, if you're not relevant, could you pass me to the right person? And they typically will. If they're not like pulled for bandwidth and there's a major news breaking thing, for example.
Awesome. I got a question for you guys. You guys talked about Help a Reporter Out, or HARO. How can you be successful with HARO? Like, which ones are good to respond to? Are there ones that aren't worth your time? Like, what do you look for? And how do you find the good leads? Or ones that you can respond to and be a good contributor for?
I would say HARO, they go out 3 times a day. So there's a lot. And I sign up obviously for the general newsletter. And then there's some specifically for travel, since majority of my clients are travel. And I'm not every day are you even going to see something that's an active story lead. So these are all active stories that people are working on. So, but also know that, I don't know what's the number of their newsletter base now, but because Cision bought it a while ago, I'm sure it's massive. And now a lot of people, like just general people that aren't publicists, for example, or other people have, signed on to this service because it's complimentary and it helps give access to, PR opportunities. I think less and less they're responding, but the more, if something is relatable to you and you you read this thing and it's about glamping, Mike and Ann, and it's like, where should we go glamping? I mean, and it's for Reader's Digest or it's from Cosmo Online. I mean, you would respond to that because you're like, oh my gosh, couldn't be more perfect. But do not respond to ones and say something, oh, I see that you write for this publication. I would like to pitch you on this. Never, never, because they'll just like, it'll just drive them crazy and they'll stop responding because you need to be strategic. You need to, if this is this is the story angle. Do you fit the story angle? If you don't, you got to move on. I wouldn't try to pitch someone something else, but it's also good to take down their name and say, okay, this person writes travel content and contributes to this publication. So maybe for a future date that you could pitch them, but don't pitch them when they're actively on a deadline trying to get sources for this. That's just as like time waster, really kind of unprofessional, really. So just always pitch when it's really something you can contribute to and you're an expert.
Are there best practices in terms of how to put together that email? Keep it short, get to the point. What are some tips there?
They'll usually have the directions explicitly in, like no attachments. If you can send me a link to anything that's like a video or anything that's relevant, it's always typically don't put any attachments whatsoever. I think they clear those up in the inbox because it goes to an inbound sifting system to the journalist, and it closes when the deadline is done. So if you've missed that opportunity, you don't even waste your time. If you've missed the deadline, that basically inbox closes. And yeah, straight to the point. I saw your hero. I am the expert because that's it. Like, here are the points. Here's what I would say if they ask you for something quotable in advance. And also I would say, like, if you're going to put a lot of homework into a hero, it has to be like really on target for you and you have to be willing to do it. Cause a lot of times, I mean, I don't want to make it disappointing, but like they don't respond. So you really want to be only responding and putting time into an outlet that you'd really love to be in and that you think you're super relevant. Otherwise, it takes a little bit of time to write these back, especially if they're asking for the tips in advance that they can just quote from.
Okay, those are good tips. And I'm asking as a content creator, as a travel blogger, like one thing that I know, I want to ask you guys is whether it's possible to ask for a link back. Is that kind of from an SEO approach? Is that something that's reasonable ask, or what are the expectations there?
I have no expectations. I never asked for that kind of thing. I feel like that was a thing years ago. I don't know. For me, I just don't really care, to be honest, because I don't make money that way. So for me, it's not a focus. I know some people go crazy about that kind of stuff, but for me, I don't care.
I would say you can ask, and they can always say no. I would say I wouldn't push it. And I also would say you can't give them like a tracking link and code. They'll usually strip that out if it's a traditional publication. Maybe if you're working with like another blogger that you're bylining in or you're working with, that might be acceptable. But I would always ask and be respectful of their, because basically, the traditional publications have free range. Like they're going to do what goes within their code of ethics. And some of them now are actually getting affiliate link backs to stuff and making money Mashable. And a lot of the publications are getting their own. So you're basically asking to take away maybe sometimes some of their revenue opportunities. So like as much as editorial and sponsored and advertising used to be disconnected, it's now, they have no choice but to find other revenue streams since advertising is basically decimated in terms of like their big spenders. So I would say it can't hurt to ask, but I wouldn't be super pushy about it because ultimately you wanted to get in the news and it's a benefit to you as well. And you can use that and put it on your, take a link to it and mention it in a blog post. I was just mentioning here and here I'm going to comment further and blah, blah, blah. And it is great SEO and link back to yours, but or you have a press page of as seen in, this publication and you can embed, which is, legal, or you ask, for copyrights and such. And if you get a byline for somewhere, a lot of people are writing for, different publications now. If they want to be willing, if you're writing for like maybe a lower rate, which is not great. We don't want to diminish people's value in terms of writing, but like if you can get a link there or somewhere else, I just wouldn't push it when it comes to, and especially with broadcast, not all the times will they give you the clip. You can ask for like, hey, are you going to putting this online? I'd love to have the clip and share it with my audience because that shows value that you're going to share it and give it to your, 100,000 followers or whatever. So maybe that might convince them to do an online story or they're planning on it. A lot of times broadcasts won't hand over a clip and they make you go through a buying service. So you can get a clipping service like Meltwater or Agility or Cision, you have to pay for the individual clip. You tell them what time you were on TV, what station and all that, and they can pull the clip down. But a lot of times, again, that they might be making a little bit of revenue off of that if they don't plan on doing an online story that replicates what was on TV.
If you do that, it's also low res and really annoying. So like inexpensive. So the only thing I ever ask for is the clip, and they'll send it to you about maybe a quarter to a third of the time. So like you could be on TV 10 times and actually only get the clip 2 to 4 times. And it's kind of annoying unless you like, tape it on your TV and then just like videotape it like that or something like that, which I have done, especially if you're doing like a national one that you want to share. But local ones, I mean, it's like hit or miss whether they give it to you. And national, only if they deem it worthy of putting on the website will they actually give you the clip.
And even when they give you the clip, they say you're not allowed to share it publicly. So it usually is like you can share it internally maybe or somewhere it's not, like because copyright infringements. But if you know, hopefully they're doing an online version of your broadcast because then you can link to it and share it, without infringing on their copyrights. So something to think about.
All right, cool. Well, we got time for one last question. Leigh, you mentioned that, I think you mentioned that you had a publicist. At what point does that make sense and how's that helped you in doing what you do?
Well, I have had publicists in the past. I no longer have one. I work with many of them. For me, I find that that's better value because, people ask me this all the time. And, at first I actually hired somebody and I was paying, and publicists do have a ton of value, but, they could be expensive and you don't necessarily like see the value right away. So like you get mentions and maybe you get on TV or whatnot. But if you've been doing it for long enough, I find that I have the contacts. So I just reach out directly to people or they know me and they reach out. But if you're just getting started, I always tell people it might be worth it to hire somebody, but, try to work something out with them or, go with a younger person, less established, would be willing to take less money or, you could work something out with basically. But then always stay friends with publicists because they're so important. So people who I don't pay, but, something comes along that they think I'd be good for, they'll come to me with it because they know me. And again, this all goes back to marketing connections. Don't burn bridges and, people have to like you. So it's all connected and really publicists can be expensive. So it really kind of depends. And you have to find one that really puts you first and fits your needs because a lot of publicists have a ton of clients and they're not necessarily in travel because there's not necessarily big money in travel.
Right. And I would say then you can work with someone who's really good. If you're wanting to get on TV, someone who you ask for their resume or like an individual consultant. I mean, I consult with a lot of different clients and we'll work, a lot of times like on hourly stuff or when I know I can really because I don't want to oversell what I can secure because editorial is editorial. It's earned media. So it's not a guarantee. If you want to pay for an advertising spot or marketing shot, knock yourself out, but it's expensive. But with agencies and PR, I think identifying what you want to get in most. If you want to be on TV, you want to get someone who's really good at booking TV. Leigh's sister, Alex, is being one of them. She's very good at booking TV and a friend of mine. So there's a lot of people out there that you can look around and see, are they really good at booking on TV stuff? They're always sharing clips of their clients and things like that. And that's really what you want. You can zero in on that person, for example. And yeah, I mean, and a lot of the agencies, the big behemoth clients of a tourism board or airline or somebody is going to probably carry the bulk, but someone that definitely is attentive and sees you as a value to them and maybe also cross value to their clients. You can talk about something, I hired Leigh to help with something for ASTA and that's another client of mine and I can get him paid for this and we can cross value each other in some ways. So I think networking, not just with the media, but PR agencies and the people who are the gatekeepers to a lot of the brands and their budget.
And just one last thing, when we're talking about, you mentioned ASTA and television, it's so important, especially if you're just starting out. There's people watching this who are like, oh, how can I get into this and how can I separate myself? You need experience. You need clips. You need to be able to show people stuff. You need to be on television and you need to speak at conferences or be a pitch man for different products. If you write a great blog, awesome. If you have 1 million views a month, you can make some money maybe. You know what I mean? But if you want to make real money doing other things than just like writing, you got to do different things, and you have to kind of be able to prove that you do it, you know, and you need to have good clips where you look good and you're on real publications. If it's like quotes or whatever, but also on television, and you have to be good at it, and then speak at conferences. Like, you know, just email whoever runs it, like Jess runs a conference, you know, basically just email her and be like, hey, I want to be a speaker there. And then you, no matter what happens, you were always a speaker there, and you can say that, and you know, and that stuff's so important. It really is.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you guys for such an amazing session, Jessica and Leigh. Before we close out, I'll let you guys kind of plug in anything you want to plug before we close this workshop.
Sure. Well, obviously you mentioned that I have a teachable school. It's talking about unpacking the secrets of PR, which I go on and on a little bit longer as well. And then I have a Travel Massive coupon for you guys for 20% off, travel.massive, all caps. So if anyone wants to go on and get the 20% off and join me for more information on PR tips, then join me there.
I mean, you can find me. You see my name right there. Everything's at Leigh Abbamonti, and just wear a mask. Let's get through this shit and go.
Yes.
And remember to vote in November. Jesus Christ, let's go.
Wear a mask for sure. We want to be able to travel again.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again. The next Toronto chapter event is on August 6th, where we'll be talking about how to create and self-publish a book on Amazon. So looking forward to you guys joining then. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you guys later.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.